Now here's something I always wanted to look at. Today, we're going to break down the first of MatPat's film theory videos about PAW. I have a lot of love for MatPat. A lot of us grew up with him and his Five Nights at Freddy's theories. And I admired how when YouTube was all iDubbbz screeching the N-word and Filthy Frank being as edgy as possible, he had his Theater Kid nerd corner carved out, stuck with it, and outlasted them all. This king of the theorists, and our first great PNG tuber, never really prioritized actual logical coherence. He knew full well a striking clickbait hook was always better than actually being logically watertight. So before I pick things apart here, I want to make it clear that I get that. These videos are meant to entertain. And in all his musical theater giving the Pope Undertale Unk energy glory, MatPat understood that profoundly. That said, let's look at his dumb takes on PAW Patrol.
It's good to just kick back and watch some PAW Patrol with my son. No deeper meanings to analyze, just a fun-loving show about puppies. So simple, so wholesome. Oh, hold on, are these puppies dead?
Well, no, MatPat, no, they are not. Even if your hypothesis is correct, the pups you're seeing are very demonstrably alive. But again, that phrasing is the hook. The reason I pause is actually to engage with the broader point. I too watch PAW Patrol to relax and enjoy the relatively simplistic, charming show. But if you so desire, there's quite a lot to get to grips with and analyze that's more germane to how the show is presenting its world building. How the society operates, how some of the travel between climates we see is feasible, whether characters are neurodivergent, how contradictions within canon and between movie and show continuities can be resolved. There's quite a bit to sink teeth into, but as AI slop farms very, very frequently show, kids are much more likely to click on a video about death. Sad to say. So sure, it's not what I'd like to see explored the most, but MatPat knows his audience, that's for sure.
Now, admittedly, I actually really like this show.
Based?
There's Chase the police officer dog, Marshall the firefighter, Sky the aviation dog, Rubble the construction pup, Zuma for water rescue, and Rocky for garbage collection.
I think we generally prefer the term recycling pup. Thank you very much.
Usually the lesson for me is that a shocking amount of problems can be solved using a winch.
As we go through these theories, one thing that will become pretty clear is that while he claims to have watched the great majority of the show up to around season 9, MatPat has fairly blatantly only watched the early seasons. Hence this winch gag, which is a salient observation for like seasons 1 to 3, but not far beyond that. In fact, seeing the winch get used these days is a heady hit of nostalgia direct to the amygdala.
The more you watch, the more it becomes clear that they had no idea what to do with some of these pups. Marshall with his fire rescue equipment, total MVP.
Yeah, keep that one in mind for his later theory that concludes Marshall is useless.
Zuma the water dog, meanwhile, yeah, you can sit this one out, buddy. And the next one. And the next one. You know what, just pose for the lunchbox.
Ah, the perennial gag for the poor old orange one. Though it's very bold to assume Zuma will make it onto the lunchbox. I'm kinda interested by this little animation they've done, though. Very much looks like they were using ripped Rescue World assets, which is interesting.
The show already comes prepackaged with a lot of really obvious questions. How come the dogs are the only animals that can talk?
So this came out in June 2022, but the copycat had shown up in December 2019 and Wild in January 2021. So, you know, this isn't really true, just on the face of it. That's without even mentioning recent canon confuzzling gags in Rocky's Catastrophe.
Why doesn't Adventure Bay have a normal police force or fire department?
Well, you know, that's a fascinating question. It might have been more interesting to explore rather than this dead pups thing. Though, since there's very little canonical info offering an explanation of any sort, and reasons probably differ between movie and show continuities, I get it not making a very good theory video.
When is Katie finally gonna admit that she has a crush on Ryder? Admittedly, the last one might just be me.
Ew, shipping discussion. I'm uploading this on Valentine's Day, but I want no part of this.
The PAW Patrol is dead. And not in just oh, this was a dream route or anything like that. I'm saying that within the canon of the show, PAW Patrol members have died and actively been replaced.
Alright, finally we get to the actual thesis of the video. And immediately it's just semantically annoying. Past members of the Paw Patrol have died is very different from the Paw Patrol is dead. It's like saying the government is dead because old ministers have died, or the students at my school are dead because the school is 200 years old and the first batch of students all died of old age. But again, I do get that there are former Paw Patrol members who have died is lousy clickbait, so we've gotta let it slide here.
So the moment that got me to start digging deeper was from Season 1, Episode 9A.
Pups get a rubble.
Written by Carolyn Hay, who has just come back to the show. 0 credits between Pups Get a Rubble and Humkicker. Isn't that crazy?
Where we learn about how Rubble the construction pup came to join the Paw Patrol. Now, this is actually one of the very few origin stories that we get for any of the pups. The only other one that we see is for Chase in the Paw Patrol movie, which I'll come back to later.
Now, obviously this was still true when MatPat made this video, since Movie 2 wasn't out yet. And arguably it's still true of the show specifically, though he's kind of treating the movie as part of the show here. We've had flashbacks since, but strictly they're not actual origin stories. Though, even if it's not when she's younger, I think it could be argued Everest's debut is an origin story. Maybe some of the villains too, but that's getting in the weeds.
In this episode, we learned that Rubble was actually the last member of the team to join.
The core team, sure. We've had a few additions since.
That bravery winds up earning him a spot on the team. He receives his signature pup tag, hard hat, and construction vehicle. Cue the end credits. You're all good, pup.
Not actually the end credits. Not sure why they didn't just use the right music, but
But hold on! Look closer at what happens in the episode. Ryder calls the pups to the lookout for the mission briefing, which he does all the time. But check out the big screen. Do you notice the pup tags along the bottom?
Yeah, okay, so the point is there's already a construction logo, ergo a prior construction pup. But even if we leave out the obvious actual answer, which is animators not bothering to make a new asset, there are numerous possible answers beyond that a previous member filled this slot. But let's hear the rest of the argument before addressing it.
Fire is Marshall, the star represents Chase and the police force, recycling is Rocky, the propeller is Sky, the anchor is Zuma, but seriously, for as little as it's used, it might as well not be there.
That was mean.
And of course, the wrench is for Rubble. But this is the first time that we've met Rubble. He was literally just saved by the team less than an hour ago, but he has a dog tag on the screen? A tag that he won't get until proving his worth at the end of the episode. His yellow segment is also already on Ryder's pup pad. How could it be there if they don't have a construction pup yet? The only way that this makes sense is if there was a construction pup prior to Rubble.
No, that's definitely not true. It could easily be that Ryder had a plan for 6 pups and made all preparations for this but hadn't found his 6th yet. I think he maybe addresses this with the scuffs and scratches on the gear, so let's let it play, but also bear in mind, even if this hypothesis is true, there's nothing at all yet that demonstrates that any possible previous member has to have died.
Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this is an animation error or something, but the evidence proving that there was a pup prior to Rubble really starts to add up once you look for it.
This is a kind of sneaky way to make a point seem stronger than it is. I know there's a better explanation, but actually other evidence supports this. It's fine if this gets revisited, but it's also a way to gloss over something and make the audience forget about it.
At the end of the episode, we see Ryder give Rubble his construction helmet, but if you look closely at the helmet, it has scrapes on it as though it's been used. This isn't a brand new helmet for a brand new profession within the Paw Patrol. This helmet used to be the last construction pup's helmet.
No, that's an assumption that doesn't stand up to scrutiny. There are a number of reasons a construction helmet might have been made by Ryder and been used without it having belonged to another pup. For example, Ryder made it and put it through tests to make sure it was durable enough before giving it to his planned future recruit. Or it was repurposed from materials previously used for a human's hard hat that he adapted rather than making it from a mold. Also, I want to start repeating here something that will get glossed over, that even if it did belong to a previous pup, it's an extra leap to say that pup died. They could easily have retired or been a bad fit for the role and only participated a few times. though I see no strong evidence yet that one existed at all. Ryder's future plans and some testing can explain everything so far. Plus, we glossed over the whole animators just don't want to make new assets metatextual argument before, but it's actually still relevant here. They don't want to redo the textures without the signs of use.
Rubble is also given the construction rig, which also has wear and tear on the front of the bulldozer portion. See that paint wearing away? Again, it's been used before.
Exact same response here. Could have come from tests or from having repurposed the material rather than making a scoop from scratch. And even if a previous member existed and used this that for some reason nobody ever mentions, there's no reason to assume they died.
More noteworthy, though, is the fact that Rubble's too small for the vehicle, and Ryder explicitly says that he's gonna need to grow first before he can truly reach the wheel.
You have a little bit of growing to do before you can reach the steering wheel.
Again, explained just fine by Ryder having planned for this member in advance and made their kit. There are certainly other explanations than that it belonged to a previous user who must never be spoken of. And again, even if such a prior user exists, they could be happily living on a farm with Old Yeller, rather than pushing up the daisies.
But you'll get there.
All the other pups have vehicles that fit them perfectly. In fact, when other new pups join the PAW Patrol, like Everest, Tracker, and Liberty, their gear fits them perfectly the first time. So Ryder is clearly capable of making gear that fits Rubble when he's small, but he doesn't. Why? It must be some sort of hand-me-down.
No, it may be. To use must, there can only be one feasible explanation. It's not even an Occam's razor situation here. He's pretending only one scenario is conceivable. But it is also conceivable Ryder planned to have a construction pup as part of his master plan, made the gear for roughly the size of his other recruits, possibly because of standardized part sizes, and then when the perfect pup came along he happened to be a bit too small. You can argue the hand-me-down scenario seems more likely, but the onus is on MatPat to demonstrate it is the only feasible scenario. And I just reject that proposition.
Here is the definitive proof that I'm right. You'll notice that each vehicle is numbered. Ryder's ATV is 1 because he's the leader. Chase is 2, Marshall 3, Sky 4, Rocky 5, Rubble 6, and Zuma 7. But did you notice a problem with that? We know out of these pups that Rubble is the last to join the team because during his story we see all the rest of the team. And yet here's his pupmobile numbered 6 of 7.
Again, this can all be explained simply by Ryder having had a pre-existing master plan. And again, even if his hypothesis is correct and there was another construction pup, he has done nothing to demonstrate this pup's death. It could have been Auntie Crane for all we know, and the vicissitudes of life just drew her away from Adventure Bay to Builder Cove. And note before one of you tries to make out my argument is unsound because I said it was definitely Auntie Crane, no. I'm just using her as an arbitrary example. It could have been any pup.
This is proof that there was a puppy before Rubble doing his job. The numbers do not lie. Zuma being number 7 proves it. Hey, would you look at that? Zuma is finally useful for something.
So mean. But no, this is not being demonstrated. A pre-existing master plan that saw Ryder build and test construction equipment but not find a pup suitable for the role until after he found Zuma as the water rescue pup also explains this.
The more you look, the more evidence you start to see of a former PAW Patrol, one that's no longer with us, one that no one speaks of. In Season 1, Episode 6B, Marshall attempts to break the record for the fastest fire pup. The implication here is that some dog held the record before him, but who?
Before we just let it slip by, the implication that nobody's speaking of old members because they're dead is not evidence of them having existed. That was a sneaky bit of psychological nudging. The point about fire pups is also not doing what MatPat is making out that it does. Other fire pup records do not give us firm evidence that there were other fire pups in the PAW Patrol, only that there were other fire pups worldwide, which, given all the other dogs with jobs we end up meeting who were working before meeting the PAW Patrol, from Sylvia to Al and Roxy, we can safely say isn't an Adventure Bay exclusive thing. Also, nitpick, but there are too many toe beans in those paw prints in the background for this universe.
What other fire pups exist in this world? No municipality outside of Adventure Bay really seems to use anything similar to a PAW Patrol. In the PAW Patrol movie, for instance, we start off with a semi-truck driving off a bridge. When Captain Turbot mentions the PAW Patrol, the truck driver has no idea what he's talking about.
That's true, but Liberty is starstruck when she contacts them and clearly knows they exist. And they're selling merch of the pups on a big enough scale to fund insane operations. There are talking pups with jobs around the world. The Occam's razor answer here is clearly that other fire pups somewhere out there have set records, not that all records set have been within the PAW Patrol. And, as with Rubble, even if there have been fire pups before Marshall, it doesn't then follow that all previous ones must be dead. Any more than if I start any job, I should assume the person who previously held that job died. Well, maybe in academia that's a safe bet.
The idea of a team of rescue dogs just isn't a normalized thing in this universe.
I don't think that's been sufficiently demonstrated at all. Again, Liberty not only knew about them, but was starstruck, and we hear they shift enough merch in-universe to fund absurd operations, so the people paying for that merch clearly know about them. And all reactions shown in these clips are consistent with it being rare rather than unheard of. Plus, the movie's continuity on this is notably a bit tonally different from the show's, so relying wholly on the movie for evidence about show continuity is fundamentally weak, especially when ignoring that the movie itself is not very consistent about the point. This whole angle of the PAW Patrol not being widely known is an attempt to make out that there can only be one fire pup, which isn't even definitively proven, even if he did show that the PAW Patrol are not well known globally anyway. There can be just 3 fire pups in the world, and his argument falls apart.
Take a look at the fastest fire pup trophy. It looks exactly like Marshall's fire engine, except Marshall doesn't have the record. Same vehicle, different pup, just like we saw with Rubble.
Well, no. Again, ignoring that this is just making it easy on animators, in a season where they made the statue of Mayor Goodway's great-great-great-great-grandfather just Mayor Humdinger colored gold, it's not weird for a local community giving a trophy for a national record to just make their own one for the purpose, especially if it's some small niche competition. And just to repeat yet again, previously existing pup doesn't mean dead pup.
But that's when you start to notice a really disturbing trend. All the pups are stray dogs. They're sad, they're scared, and they're alone. Then, and only then, are they enlisted by Ryder.
That's not true. Almost all sub-series pups have homes and jobs already. So sure, we'll say he just means the core pups, and let's ignore Rubble now having an extended family and a double life also living in Builder Cove, and Sky actually having numerous siblings and very likely parents out there somewhere, which hadn't happened yet when this video was made. Yes, the pups who actually live with him have him as their family. Otherwise, them living with him would be weird. The premise is that they're rescue pups that rescue, so I kind of feel like he's making it sound like he's uncovering a big truth, when it's just the basic premise of the story here.
Pretty much every origin story that we have for new members onto the team, it's always the same. A lone dog with no connections and no home is enlisted to be a PAW Patrol member. Mountain Dog Everest, Jungle Dog Tracker, yep, they're the exact same way.
I can't wait to meet them. It gets kind of lonely sometimes. Are you going to stay around here? It would be great to have a friend nearby.
I'd like to make you an official member of the PAW Patrol.
Well, no. This is just the classic case of cherry-picking your evidence. Tracker isn't rootless when Carlos takes him in. He talks about his grandfather, and just because we don't see them, doesn't mean he has no family. And if he's using Everest, who of course goes to stay with Jake and not with the core team, this quickly falls apart when we go further. Tuck and Ella, who don't stay with the team, have collars before we meet them. Rex is already with Taylor and Tammy Turbot, and at least before movie 3 retcons this, doesn't fit this mold at all. Wild's even famous before joining up, and these were all on the show before MatPat made this video.
Ryder collects abandoned, stray, and orphan dogs to add to his team. Why? Well, here's where it all starts to come together. The missing pups, the new additions to the team, they're all expendable.
Now we get to the biggest leap in the theory. Hey, all you orphans out there in the world, no one cares if you die, right? The moment they're rescued and Ryder, or Jake, or Carlos become their loving owners, they have families and start forming deep bonds. That they don't have roots before they have roots, therefore it doesn't matter if they die, is a gigantic hot take that doesn't stand up to scrutiny at all.
Ryder doesn't use the pups for rescues because they're best suited for the task. He's using them because the risk of losing a human life is too great, and having puppies perform the rescues means minimum human casualties.
They're in a universe where dogs are sapient, so this is making all sorts of false equivalence assumptions. Plus, he and the other owners very obviously form deep emotional connections, so the idea that it wouldn't matter to lose these lives is just so specious and, honestly, fundamentally cruel.
So how does any of this benefit Ryder? Well, financially, the cost must be far less than employing several police officers, builders, and lifeguards.
Well, that might matter if it wasn't so frequently made so clear that finances are not remotely an issue for Ryder or the team. It's probably the most discussed point about the show that they seem to have limitless resources. He also says several for no apparent reason, and I don't actually think it's a given that paying for the entire life of a sapient pup is categorically cheaper than the wage of one equivalent worker. Kibble isn't the only expense to keeping a dog. And I just want to reiterate that the emotional bonds between these characters is a big point of emphasis we're just ignoring here, and pretending losing them wouldn't hurt so we can argue backwards from the intended conclusion.
Meanwhile, Ryder gets to keep all the cash for himself.
What cash? You've just made this cash up. We see basically no monetary transactions on the show, certainly not as rewards for the rescues. In fact, you referred earlier to how much you liked the joke about merch selling like hotcakes. The money side of the operation actually goes against your thesis in a major way, because we're being told money is made by presenting the pups as merchandising opportunities. Thus, people are invested in individual pups, and it would be an enormous blow to business if one of them died. MatPat does address a portion of this, but not in a satisfactory way.
Ryder attributes all the team's wealth to the merch, but government contracts tend to pay even better.
Well, in our universe, at a national level, maybe, but earlier you were emphasizing how this is a small local operation not known very widely. Government contracts for a small town aren't really going to be comparable to a successful merchandising operation, and you're not hitting the most important point here, which is that the merch operation existing at all is undermining the point you're making about the pups being expendable and easily forgotten. These two things are contradictory, but that isn't getting addressed by this argument. Either they're well known enough for merchandise to be a big hit, or they're obscure enough for the pups to be able to die with nobody caring. But then there would be no big government bucks involved, and assumptions based on our world are being applied to a fictional universe where by no means can we be certain they're applicable.
It's $1 billion business built on the backs of puppies. Pups that are expendable. Pups that are following in the paw prints of other pups that came before them. Ones that died in the line of duty and have been swept away by history.
This has not been demonstrated and has become circular in its argumentation. MatPat is essentially saying the pups can die unnoticed because they're expendable, and are expendable because they can die unnoticed. He hasn't actually demonstrated that it would be profitable to run this operation with pups dying often, and certainly hasn't shown that in-universe that would be unnoticed and uncontroversial. Earlier he mentioned the possibility of them being martyred, having his cake and eating it, making out that it supports his argument both if they're well known and if they're dying anonymously, which in neither case is true.
But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut.
So, once again, let's make it clear. This is a great, entertaining YouTube video, and fun to watch. It's not logical at all and makes several totally unsupported leaps while obfuscating more plausible alternatives. It doesn't convincingly demonstrate any of its claims, but it doesn't really have to. It's not intended to be watched or analyzed by anyone well versed in debate or argumentation, and it knows that pretty much anyone who is trained in more rigorous textual analysis will know this for what it is. excellent entertainment with a clickbait conclusion it wants to reach no matter what, and plausible sounding nuggets of evidence for a very young audience. I hope this response is taken in the same spirit. Overanalyzing something that's been made as a bit of fun, and making something else fun out of it. Which I hope you've enjoyed as much as I have. Much love to MatPat, whose other theories we may also look at another time, but that's all I have to say about that, and I will see you guys again next time.